2018, VetCBD helped pass Assembly Bill AB 2215, allowing veterinarians to discuss cannabinoid therapy with clients. This legislation enabled informed decision-making in pet healthcare, giving pet owners alternative treatment options with professional guidance. But the story doesn't end there. In 2022, VetCBD continued its advocacy efforts and helped pass Assembly Bill AB 1885, allowing veterinarians to take the next step and recommend cannabinoid therapeutics when they deem it appropriate for their patients' health. These legislative wins showcase VetCBD's dedication to advancing pet health and ensuring access to safe, effective treatments. Stay informed, stay engaged, and together with VetCBD, let's continue to advocate for the best possible care for our beloved pets.
At Green Bee Life, you can watch GBL TV.
And going up.
You can learn on Know and Go.
Did you know THC and CBD are just 2 of more than 100 cannabinoids?
And you can shop for carefully curated, high-quality products for a conscious lifestyle. We cover everything from pets to wellness, compliance, social equity, culinary arts, sustainability, and much, much more.
We really want to make this platform watch, learn, and shop so that your first time you have a place in the safety of your own home or watching on your phone where you can feel a little prepared and learn and then shop.
Green Bee Life, changing the way the world sees green.
Join free, greenbeelife.com.
What we've seen take place in the last 2 years has been the most rapid transformation of any industry I've ever seen.
If you consider a plant that has 3 potential harvestable components, there aren't too many other crops that can serve that role.
By 2020, Bank of America and Merrill Lynch estimate that will grow to $35 billion. And many experts believe it could eventually reach $200 billion each and every year.
Hello, I'm your host, Maria Calabrese, and you're listening to Just Say No, No with a K, KNOW on KCAA Radio, coming to you from the Inland Empire and beyond, 1050 AM, 106.5 on your dial. Today, we've got a fascinating topic to cover, pets and cannabis. Can our furry friends really benefit from the therapeutic properties of cannabis? Kinda, you bet. But don't take it from me. To help us understand this evolving area, we're going to be joined by internationally recognized Dr. Tim Hsu. Tim is the founder of VetCBD. Dr. Hsu has a wealth of experience in veterinarian medicine and a deep understanding of how cannabis can enhance the lives of our animals, from managing anxiety and pain to supporting joint health. So, if you're a pet parent, like me, curious about natural alternatives, or just interested in how veterinarian science intersects with cannabis, this is an episode packed with insights you're not going to want to miss. He's been featured on The Today Show, NPR, CNBC, and in the New York Times. Dr. Hsu's passion for animal health started at a young age, and he's practiced everything from emergency care to general veterinarian medicine. And I'm really excited to dive into his knowledge. Welcome, Dr. Hsu. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me, Maria. I appreciate the kind words. Glad to be here.
Tim, no doubt your expertise in veterinarian medicine is extensive. But I have to say, I'm really curious about how you expanded your knowledge from traditional veterinarian medicine to medical cannabis. Can you share a bit with us about your journey and how you even came upon cannabis?
Yeah, so I saw how well it worked for people, and for me, it's really interesting because I was born and raised in Texas, and so cannabis has been heavily stigmatized in Texas, and so growing up, my understanding and my knowledge of cannabis was that it was something dangerous, right? Because that's what we saw on TV was that if you ever smoke a joint, you're done for. You might as well just throw your life away.
This is your brain on drugs. Just say no. No. No is a 4-letter word.
Plenty of those commercials growing up. And, we growing up in Texas, we heard about people getting arrested for, having a joint on them. And, it was just, it was a very scary thing. And then, I moved out to California after I graduated from veterinary school. And, I saw how different of an attitude California's perspective on cannabis was. And so, I took a deep dive into it and, really looked at the potential therapeutic benefits of cannabis and why it was working well in people and why, states like California embraced it so much. Because my perspective, my philosophical perspective is that, as healthcare practitioners, we really have to explore all therapeutic avenues for our patients, right? We have to understand the potential of it. And even if there is no benefit, if there is no potential, then we have to say that, okay, we took a very hard look at it and, we don't think there's potential. But, if you take a very hard look at cannabis, you will understand that there is a massive amount of therapeutic potential. And we're doing our patients and our clients a huge disservice if we don't advocate for them being able to access and use cannabis to improve their lives, whether it's on the human side or the animal side. We have a moral and ethical obligation to be able to advocate for those patients to be able to incorporate cannabis into their medical regimen. And so for me, when I was in practice, there was certain kinds of medications that we frequently prescribed, pretty much on a daily basis. And, some of these medications, I would always have to warn the owners that, signs to watch out for and potential complications with some of these medications are things like GI ulcerations, liver damage, kidney damage. And, that would scare the pet owners, right? They come in for one thing and now they're concerned that, they got to watch out for something like, kidney damage or liver damage. And so, for me, it's important that we look at all potential modalities. And if cannabis can be a better use for certain cases, then why not allow patients to be able to utilize that? We certainly know that, for example, chronic pain can be very difficult to control. And, especially given the current medications that are frequently used for chronic pain. But we know that cannabis can be very, very good for chronic pain. So, why let these patients continue to suffer? Why not use cannabis and allow them to live better lives?
Exactly. Look at me, case in point. I've had 4 major spinal surgeries dating back to 1987, which coincidentally was after my first year of law school. So cannabis wasn't even on the table for me. But after my first back surgery, it just kept failing. Over the years, I faced so many complications, continuous issues, including what you mentioned, GI problems and bleeds. I mean, GI bleeds associated with nonsteroidal anti-inflammatories are responsible for over 100,000 deaths in the U.S. per year. And, at the time, medical marijuana, that just wasn't an option for me. It felt like something dangerous. I ended up relying on, speaking of dangerous, opioids, analgesics, nonsteroidal anti-inflammatories, steroids, nerve pain medications. The list goes on. And we don't have enough time if I go through the list of all the different medications I had to take to deal with the side effects that eventually caught up with me from these pharmaceutical drugs. There was such a strong stigma against cannabis that when I decided to dip my toe in the water, I used the same logic for myself that I did for my dogs. Even though I saw that the full spectrum helped my dogs, THC, marijuana, I started with an isolate, a CBD isolate. And as I felt more comfortable, I actually moved to a full spectrum. And I then even moved to things that have a CBD THC ratio that are only available in legal states at dispensaries. I know I've used it myself in my pets for managing pain, but I'm also curious about how it helps with things like anxiety or other common triggers like loud noises or separation. What have you seen in your practice?
Yeah, that's, you hit on one of the amazing things about cannabis is that it actually has so many different therapeutic uses. A lot of times, seemingly completely unrelated benefits. So for example, we have clients that use it for their pets to control seizures with epilepsy. And then we also have people using it for chronic pain, like you might see with arthritis, and then also to control noise anxieties because of all the fireworks that are going off.
Really interesting. I can say I've seen firsthand with my older shepherd that cannabis, particularly full spectrum CBD, helped tremendously. I mean, it's hailed for having shown such promise in treating a variety of conditions in animals. Pain management being a big one, especially for older pets with arthritis or joint issues. Now, a lot of our pet parent listeners, including myself, we're looking for natural ways to help our animals, especially as they get older. Why don't you explain how cannabis works in animals and a little bit about the different formulations available?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of questions to unpack there, but let's just talk about how cannabinoids in general work within the animal's body. So, cannabinoids will interact with a number of different receptors that are all throughout the body, but they will also act with what's called the endocannabinoid system. And so the endocannabinoid system is a bodily system that is intertwined with all other aspects of our physiology and in animals as well, because the endocannabinoid system is found throughout the animal kingdom. It exists in dogs, cats, horses, ferrets, pigs, birds, you name it. It doesn't exist in insects, but throughout the animal kingdom, especially all vertebrate animals, it's ubiquitously present. And this system consists of the cannabinoid receptors that cannabinoids bind to, the endocannabinoids that our own bodies produce. So you and I, your dog, we all produce our own cannabinoids within our body. And then the third component of the endocannabinoid system is the enzymes that make and break down these endocannabinoids. So what cannabinoids will do is they interact with this endocannabinoid system and the endocannabinoid receptors to create therapeutic functions and therapeutic benefits. It also interacts with other receptors that are not a part of the endocannabinoid system to help create these therapeutic benefits. So, CBD is really interesting because it's been listed to interact with over 40 different cellular targets. So not just ones within the endocannabinoid system. One example is that it has been shown to interact with the 5-HT1A receptors, which are serotonin receptors. And that's hypothesized is that that's one way it helps to decrease anxiety. Going back to your other question about the differences between all the different plants and products that are out there, when we get down to the basis of it, it's all cannabis. But there's a lot of different terminology out there now that gets confusing to a lot of people. What's marijuana and what's hemp? The easiest way to understand it is that hemp is now a legal definition. So hemp is cannabis plants that are less than 0.3% THC by dry weight. So when you take the actual plant and you dry it out, if you test it and it has less than 0.3% THC, then that can be classified as hemp. If it has more than 0.3% THC, then that's technically marijuana, even though marijuana is an outdated term, and we tend to use cannabis on the marijuana side, which gets even more confusing. But for us as a company, we separate it as cannabis and hemp, even though technically hemp is cannabis. our Vet CBD hemp line, available online and in non-dispensary retail outlets. Now, when it comes to product formulation, there's a general category that CBD products can be broken down into. That's full spectrum products, broad spectrum products, and isolate. So, starting with the most simple is what we call isolate. So, CBD isolate is just 99+% pure CBD. So, when you're using that in a formulation, all you're getting is CBD. You're not really getting any of the other cannabinoids that come from the cannabis plant. So, it's pretty much stripped of everything else except just CBD. And then on the other end of that, you have what we call full spectrum products.
And we now know that there's approximately over 120 plus different cannabinoids, not just CBD and THC are only two. But then you've got full spectrum products, which include all the other compounds. Can you explain the difference and why someone might choose one over the other when it comes to their pets?
Well, it gets a little bit more technical than that. There's been over 120 different cannabinoids that have been identified. Now, that's not to say that every single plant has all 120 of those cannabinoids, because the largest amount of cannabinoids are found in THC, CBD, CBG, CBC, CBN, and then the other cannabinoids that are found tend to be much, much smaller quantities, if at all. So, for example, there's a lot of plants out there that are very, very high THC, but have very little in terms of any other cannabinoids. And then there's other strains out there that can have a really nice full spectrum, whereas they have, a high amount of CBD, they have some THC, some good amounts of CBC and CBG as well. So it also depends on the strain that you're working with.
Does Vet CBD hemp, for instance, work with any particular strain or strains?
We work with a number of different ones. So what we do is we look at the cannabinoid profile. So, because what we've seen over the years is that, one person calling something Blue Dream may be something completely different than what another person calls Blue Dream, or same thing with AC/DC or Ringo's Gift or, Harley Sue. So what we do is we look at the cannabinoid profile. So whatever the name is, we'll test it and take a look at what cannabinoid shows on the lab test. So that way we know the actual cannabinoids that we're working with, rather than just basing it off of the strain.
And that's how you achieve consistency, which is so important when it comes to dosing.
Right. So, CBD isolate is on one end, and then on the other end, you have what's called full spectrum. And so full spectrum does contain small amounts of THC, as well as other cannabinoids, usually CBC and CBG and sometimes CBN. And the reason why this is important is because there's been a lot of studies, both preclinical studies in, lab animals, in petri dishes or test tubes, but also in humans as well, that have shown that when using a full spectrum product versus an isolate, you actually get greater therapeutic benefits. You're able to use lower doses, and you can have fewer side effects than compared to using an isolate. So that's why we use full spectrum products, because you get greater therapeutic benefits from a full spectrum product.
I really appreciate your explaining that in that way, Dr. Shu. There's so much stigma around marijuana or THC, or what they're calling now cannabis, which kind of gets under my skin, because I don't think marijuana or THC should be validated as a dirty word. But okay, cannabis. And it's easy to get caught up in all of that stigma. But then you hear from experts like yourself, and you realize, oh, there's so much more to the story about THC or marijuana or cannabis, whatever we're going to call it. I mean, THC has been vilified for so long, yet as you dig deeper, you're going to just find out more and more about its therapeutic value that it actually offers. And then on the other side, there's all the hype around CBD as this miracle product with no THC, or only trace amounts, or only tiny bits. And I'll admit, I bought in. I started my dogs on CBD isolate thinking it was the safest, the most effective option. And, I'm not going to give them THC, right? But it turns out it wasn't the best choice for them. So learning from experts about the benefits of full spectrum has been eye-opening for me.
Yeah, one of the important things for people to realize is that, THC is not purely just used for recreational purposes in humans. THC does have medicinal value. So, it can be very good at helping with things like pain, inflammation, nausea, and appetite loss. There's also some research that shows it potentially has anti-cancer benefits. That hasn't been as well studied, but certainly for things like pain, inflammation, nausea, and appetite loss, it can be very beneficial. Now, when it comes to our animal patients, we do have to be more careful in terms of how much THC we're using. So that's why the formulation, whenever there's THC involved, has to be very careful.
Hey, that makes a lot of sense. But when it comes to THC specifically, are animals, dogs in particular, more sensitive to it? Do they have a hypersensitivity? Or is it more about getting the dosage right? I want to just verify things that I've read saying THC can be more toxic to animals than humans. So is there any truth to that? And how do you ensure it's safe?
Well, so dogs are going to be more sensitive to THC. And the reason why is they have a higher concentration of CB1 receptors in a part of their brain called their cerebellum. And so, it's with dogs, you have to make sure that you're using the appropriate amount of THC and using it in conjunction with other cannabinoids, because we know, for example, CBD can counter some of the side effects of THC, for example, like the anxiety effects of THC. But interestingly enough, THC at very, very low doses actually helps to remove anxiety. It's at higher doses that THC can start to generate anxiety. And that's just because of the way the different receptors function in different parts of the brain.
That is so interesting. I mean, I never even thought about the interaction of the different cannabinoids until diving in deeper. And when you talk about the full spectrum and the interaction between the cannabinoids, the impact the THC has on the CBD, it makes me think of it's the difference of taking a vitamin C supplement, which is just vitamin C extracted and purely vitamin C, right? And the difference between that and eating an entire orange. Whereas if you eat the entire orange, then the vitamin C is being combined with and impacted by all of the other phytonutrients, not to mention all of the other phytonutrients you're receiving. So whole plant medicine, that includes THC, is not the devil's weed. So I really appreciate the opportunity speaking with experts like yourself, because what you're saying is fact-based and backed by science. It seems like the science is getting better. Would you say with the proliferation of legalization, we're moving the ball forward a little bit in that department? I remember, I'm sure you remember, when it seemed we had to rely solely on preclinical data, preclinical studies. But from whenever I speak to you, I get heartened because it seems like the information has some more concrete data. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, what's really interesting is that there has been a lot of preclinical research. What that means is in lab animals, petri dishes and things like that. Since the 60s. Now we are starting to see more clinical trials in humans and animals as well. Now, especially since the 2018 Farm Bill passed. Now with increasing legalization, we'll start to see more and more of these clinical trials that will start to back up the benefits that we've seen anecdotally across the board in both humans and animals for the past few decades.
That is so exciting and hopeful. So we've covered the differences between CBD isolate and full spectrum, but what can still be a bit confusing, at least to me, is this middle ground. What exactly is broad spectrum? I see that term marketed a lot, and it's not always clear what sets it apart from full spectrum or from isolate. I mean, other than some manufacturers are touting that unlike full spectrum, it still has THC, but it has trace amounts that are non-detectable in a drug test, which is important to humans depending on what state they live in and job they have. I don't know if that's a distinction that's as important for animals. But yeah, what sets it apart, broad spectrum from full spectrum?
Yeah, so broad spectrum is essentially the THC taken out. So, broad spectrum, it's done through a chemical process in which the THC is removed out of full spectrum. Now, a lot of times what happens is when that THC gets removed, we see a lot of other minor cannabinoids like CBC and CBG tend to drop out as well. There are some improved techniques out there now that preserve some of those minor cannabinoids like CBC and CBG. But generally what happens is broad spectrum is somewhere in the middle between isolate and full spectrum. What it does is it strips out some of those cannabinoids like THC.
I love speaking to you. I learned so much, and it's because you explain things in such a clear, concise, and easy to understand, accessible way. There's no getting lost in the weeds with you. Pardon the pun, I couldn't resist. And now, a word from our sponsor.
In 2018, VetCBD helped pass Assembly Bill AB 2215, allowing veterinarians to discuss cannabinoid therapy with clients. This legislation enabled informed decision-making in pet healthcare, giving pet owners alternative treatment options with professional guidance. But the story doesn't end there. In 2022, VetCBD continued its advocacy efforts and helped pass Assembly Bill AB 1885, allowing veterinarians to take the next step and recommend cannabinoid therapeutics when they deem it appropriate for their patients' health. These legislative wins showcase VetCBD's dedication to advancing pet health and ensuring access to safe, effective treatments. Stay informed, stay engaged, and together with VetCBD, let's continue to advocate for the best possible care for our beloved pets.
Did you know THC and CBD are just 2 of more than 100 cannabinoids?
At Green Bee Life, you can watch GBL TV with an evolving slate of original programming
And going up, 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 up.
from a diverse group of on-air personalities,
I want my GBL TV.
where we cover everything from pets to wellness, compliance, social equity, culinary arts, sustainability, and much, much more. You can learn from articles on our journal. And you can shop on Know & Go for carefully curated, high-quality products for a conscious lifestyle. Watch, learn, shop.
Green Bee Life, changing the way the world sees green.
You're listening to KCAA 1050 AM, 106.5 FM on your dial. And now, back to the show. Each week, we like to share consumer tips and insights on how to choose a quality product for our listeners. So I'd love to ask you, what are some key tips, for instance, that we should keep in mind when we're looking at labels?
Sure. So, one of the things is that you want to understand who's behind the product, right? Is it veterinarian formulated? Do they have veterinarians on staff that provide input into the formulation, into all the ingredients? So for us, I formulate all the products, and then we also have veterinary nurses on staff too, because for pet owners, this is something that is therapeutic. It's meant to improve the quality of life for their pets. And so being able to get, good customer support when they need it is one of the most important things for us. And so that's why we have a team of veterinary nurses on staff. So that way, when anyone emails us or calls us, they're able to talk to veterinary professionals. And, if they want to talk to me, I'm more than happy to talk to them. I call owners all the time, just to, educate them about cannabinoids. So, being able to understand the formulation process and the customer support process is something that's really important. But also being able to access things like a certificate of analysis, because what a lot of studies have actually shown over the years is that because CBD on the hemp side is not very regulated. And so what that means is that there's no testing requirements.
Testing requirements on the CBD hemp side?
Right. On the cannabis side, it's very, very different story.
Do you think that will change anytime soon?
I think so, but it really remains to be seen. It's a big question, but we know that on the cannabis side of things, it's a complete difference. So just to give you an example, on the cannabis side of things, what we do is we do more than what's required. So basically, in terms of what's required for every cannabis product in California, is the final batches have to be tested for potency, so that whatever's on the label is accurately reflected in the product, and then it also has to be tested for heavy metals, pesticides, solvents, microbials like E. coli and Salmonella, and also mycotoxins. And what we do is we go a step beyond that. We do a triple testing procedure. So we also test the raw ingredients that we use. So the cannabis extract, the organic extra virgin olive oil that we use, we test all of those for things like pesticides, microbials, solvents, and heavy metals to make sure that we're only dealing with clean material. And then during the manufacturing process, we'll do a potency check on it to make sure that whatever is being produced is actually what's going to match up on the label. And then once everything's batched up and finalized, then it'll go for that final compliance test, which means, again, it'll get tested for potency, heavy metals, microbials, solvents, pesticides, and mycotoxins. So we test over and over and over to make sure that we get clean, safe, consistent product. And we do this on the hemp side as well. We've taken our SOP from the cannabis side of things and implemented it on the hemp side of things. So that way we go above and beyond to make sure that, again, we're only dealing with clean, safe, consistent material.
Clean, safe, and consistent. Comes down to a label that reflects and backs with testing and good manufacturing practices, the purity and the potency of the product. You want to be able to discern that if it says it has this much CBD in it, it has that much CBD in it. And that if it says it has this much THC in it, it has truly only that much, or at least that much. And we don't want to be having pesticides and microbials. And so you want to see that it's been tested for contaminants. All right. Well, Tim, honestly, it sounds like the manufacturing and testing practices that VetCBD Hemp employs, I don't think the organic strawberries I eat would pass. Just saying.
Right, exactly. Yeah. In the licensed regulated cannabis market, those cannabis products are tested and regulated and are cleaner than the food and the water that we drink every day.
Cannabis is a vital adjunct therapy, sometimes even a better option when Western medicine runs out of options. That said, we do have to consider the potential side effects. Have you seen anything clinically concerning with cannabis use in animals, aside from the risks of overdoing it with the THC?
Yeah, so CBD is not completely side effect free. Now, fortunately, the potential side effects of CBD are very, very mild. And this can happen for humans and animals as well. So side effects of CBD are GI upset. They can have diarrhea or soft stools. They can also get sleepy or feel fatigued.
Okay.
So, now when you compare that side effect profile to a lot of the other side effect profiles of common medications, like you had mentioned before, from a clinician's perspective, that is far, far safer than a lot of the traditional pharmaceuticals that we tend to utilize on a daily basis. But that's something to be aware of, is that, CBD can have these potential side effects, even though they tend to be mild and are fairly negligible.
So relatively mild and negligible compared to some of the side effects associated with the pharmaceutical alternatives to treat the same ailments. All right, now we're ready for one of my favorite segments. We're going to grow or know, everybody, with our expert, Dr. Tim Shue. So Tim, we've talked about potential side effects. We've talked about dosing. Now, prior to the proliferation of more scientific research, there's been a lot of this information has been based on anecdotal evidence. So what is the science saying? What is the research saying?
Right. Yeah. And so dosing is something that's really important. And that's why for dosing, we always tell people to start low and then gradually work their way up based on the clinical signs or based on the response that they're seeing, because the dose is actually going to vary from patient to patient and for use to use. So we've seen some interesting cases where, we have two dogs that are about the same size that are using it for the same condition, but the amount that they're using is different. One may need it only once a day, one may need it twice a day. And some of the studies out there that have shown differences in terms of absorption rates. So for example, it's really interesting. There was one study that showed that there was dogs that, even though they got the same dose, some dogs had 5 times the absorption rate that other dogs did. And so this just goes to show you that the dosing needs to be done on an individualized basis. We have general guidelines that go by body weight, but what we always tell people is start at a lower level and then gradually increase that dose until you're seeing the optimal benefits from it. So, the key that we're aiming for is we're trying to use the lowest dose that provides the maximum benefits.
What I really appreciate about your approach to dosing is you're honest. We start low and go slow. Start low, see what your dog tolerates, even in yourself, and then gradually increase as tolerated to the desired effect. That's fantastic. And even a lot of the data is showing that this is individualized medicine. What works in one dog doesn't work in another. Just like in humans, some people are super sensitive to medication. Other people, it doesn't hit them as hard.
Did you want to talk about some of the other uses of cannabis?
Sure, yes. Oh, good. You have time. On your packaging, it mentioned that your product supports normal brain function. It also touched on its use for dogs with epilepsy and seizures. When I first saw the normal brain function indication, I didn't immediately connect that to those specific conditions. It seems like you have general claims about supporting mobility, brain function, and GI health. But can you just elaborate on how your product specifically addresses conditions like seizures and epilepsy?
Yeah. So, this is one of the most common questions is what can cannabis be used for, right? Because people are familiar with cannabis use recreationally in humans. But even in terms of medical uses for cannabis in humans, people don't really know that much about it, much less so when it comes to animals. So one of the most common questions is, what can cannabis be used for in animals? And so I got this question so much, I came up with an acronym to help people remember more easily. And so that acronym is PAINS, so spelled PAINS. And what it stands for is it stands for pain, anxiety, inflammation, nausea and appetite loss, and seizures. So that's not to say that those are the only things that cannabis can be used for, but those are the most commonly seen ailments that cannabis is able to benefit.
And appetite loss, that's one I didn't even realize cannabis could be used for, but it actually ties to the Compassion Care Act when medicinal marijuana went online in California due to the appetite loss caused by chemotherapy and AIDS victims were suffering from. So it makes total sense. I have to say, though, when our senior dog was facing that issue, Full Spectrum was the only thing that had helped me. But I want to caution listeners, my point of entry was a CBD isolate, and that didn't work. Don't give up. Don't give up, and don't be intimidated by the broad or the full spectrum. At the time, for me, broad and full spectrum products weren't even available online or in retail stores. You had to go to a dispensary. And oh my God, I found that so intimidating.
Everyone should have the the pleasure of going into a licensed dispensary. A lot of people have this this older notion of what a dispensary is.
I went to my first dispensary. It was very disorienting, and that's not comfortable. My body was reacting. Gosh, I hope no one I know sees me, and oh, should I be doing this? And oh my God, you've got the armed guard, you're giving your ID. Oh, they don't take credit cards. They have the ATM, the funky looking ATM machine in the corner. And then you get past all of that and you're in a very nurturing environment. It's like an old apothecary, not the corporate CVS environment. But I felt at a loss. What's an eighth? How do you even order it? Would you like to smell this? No. It was awkward. It was very awkward.
But in a legal marketplace, I mean, these dispensaries are some of the most gorgeous storefronts that you've seen. So I do encourage everyone to visit their local dispensary. You know, a lot of people put a lot of time and effort, and they put their heart into it. And you know, it's the cannabis community is a wonderful community, and the licensed dispensaries are just beautiful dispensaries.
Yeah, they are. They're like Apple stores. Do you provide support and education for the bud tenders?
Right, right, yeah. So staff training is something that we really focus heavily on.
Nice, nice. It's very important to choose and support dispensaries that work with brands and manufacturers who offer the education and support to their staff. Good, good. Now you have a hemp line available online and in retail stores, also available at greenbeelife.com.
On the hemp side of things, we are also doing full spectrum, but the amount of THC is less. So, you know, because of the way the hemp plant grows and because of the way, you know, the cannabinoids are extracted. So it does have small amounts of THC in there, but our hemp line is available online at vetcbdhemp.com and then also through non-dispensary retailers as well.
That's great that the hemp line is available online and in accordance with the Farm Bill, at least at this point in time. They're allowing online and in retail spaces hemp that has up to 0.3% THC. We're dealing with rules and regulations, but now the full spectrum hemp-derived CBD products online that are more CBD to THC sometimes work as well. So you have to check it out for yourselves. And that's why I think it's really important we build a community where we can gather anecdotal evidence and share it. Hearing people share their experiences with different products and ratios and their various applications is invaluable. For example, Case, I had no idea that your product could help with anxiety during loud noises. I had it sitting on my counter for joint pain for my older German Shepherd and never thought to try it for the purpose of the anxiety loud noises caused in her. So speaking of loud noises, fireworks, for instance, do you have any general tips for pet owners on how to keep their pet safe during loud noises if their dog's anxiety is triggered and they tend to dash for the door? Besides using CBD or cannabis, what advice do you have? This is an important topic for things like microchipping in case pets get anxious and want to run away.
Yeah, so that's something that's really important is that July 5th is actually the busiest time of year for animal shelters. And the reason why is because the night before, all the animals are trying to run away from the fireworks noise. And so July 5th tends to be the busiest time of year. And so, one of the most important things is to make sure that, things like your fences and your gates and your doors are secured. And then also to make sure that you have proper identification on your pets, and whether that's in the form of, tags and collars or microchip, so that way they have your information, your address and your phone number, so that way, if your pet does get out and they are able to pick up your pet, they can at least find out who the right owner is and get your pet back to you. So those things are very important. Other things that you can do is also things like behavioral modification, positive reinforcement. I think one thing that's really important is to understand the animal's mentality. A lot of times when people see that their pets are afraid, they will tend to talk to them in a really soothing voice, and then they'll tend to try to give them treats to calm them or relax them. But this can actually have the reverse effect, because in essence what they might be thinking is that you're rewarding them for that fearful behavior. And so what I would encourage people to do is talk to a veterinary behaviorist. There are actually board certified veterinary behaviorists out there that deal with all kinds of behavior issues, especially with noise anxiety, to help them understand the steps that they can do to help their pet be a little bit less afraid of things like fireworks, loud noises, and things like that. But just to kind of help people understand, we want to understand what effective positive reinforcement looks like.
That's true. A lot of veterinarians may not fully understand animal behavior or take a holistic approach like you do. We went to an animal behaviorist who recommended desensitizing our dog that was terrified of loud noises by exposing her gradually, rewarding her tolerance along the way. It was comforting to positively reinforce her when she was freaking out to us, but very counterproductive for her. So, like cannabis, low and slow. Tim, I could talk to you forever, but we're going to have to wrap. Before we wrap, though, one very important thing. We have a legal updates section, and I wanted to talk to you about the legality. I mean, can I get CBD for my pets from my veterinarian? So can you touch on the political landscape surrounding the issue and what veterinarians can or cannot do? It seems like there's been a lot of oversights in the legislation where in medical marijuana states, privileges afforded to physicians or osteopaths that apply to humans just weren't thought about in the legislation to apply to animals.
Yeah, it's a tricky issue about where cannabis and hemp are in terms of the animal side of things. Human physicians have more protection, but in California we are leading the country in terms of allowing vets to take part in the picture. So in 2018, AB 2215 got passed in California, and what that allowed for is veterinarians to be able to discuss cannabis with their clients. The issue with it is that it didn't allow for recommendation with their clients. Now, granted, it's a term of art, and in the law, it actually means a written recommendation, the way that the physicians would write for their clients. Unfortunately, the way that it's interpreted, many have interpreted it to mean that they can't even verbally recommend cannabis. And so that's another bill that we're working on, which will actually allow for veterinarians to make recommendations in terms of cannabis products. And so that will help complete the picture, and that will really help California lead the country and really, quite frankly, the world in terms of the integration of veterinarians into cannabinoid therapeutics.
Leading the world in terms of the integration of veterinarians into cannabinoid therapeutics is crucial and indeed on the path you are forging. Did you know VetCBD leads the way in California's progressive pet healthcare legislation?
In 2018, VetCBD helped pass Assembly Bill AB 2215, allowing veterinarians to discuss cannabinoid therapy with clients. This legislation enabled informed decision-making in pet healthcare, giving pet owners alternative treatment options with professional guidance. But the story doesn't end there. In 2022, VetCBD continued its advocacy efforts and helped pass Assembly Bill AB 1885, allowing veterinarians to take the next step and recommend cannabinoid therapeutics when they deem it appropriate for their patients' health. These legislative wins showcase VetCBD's dedication to advancing pet health and ensuring access to safe, effective treatments. Stay informed, stay engaged, and together with VetCBD, let's continue to advocate for the best possible care for our beloved pets.
We just thank you so much, and it's just for anyone interested in becoming involved in supporting these efforts, please go to greenbeelife.com. We have plenty of advocacy materials, and we'll keep you up to date on what's happening in the world with veterinarians and how you could be involved in your state. I say it again and again, it's so important to know the issues, know how they impact you, so that you're voting based on your value system, not against what will work for you.
We appreciate your support, and I'm glad you're finding comfort for yourself as well.
We have it backwards. We're using end-of-life drugs, morphine, Ativan, narco, opioids, to deal with chronic conditions that sometimes their onset is in people, like when it happened for me, it was in my early 20s. It's not sustainable. So It's just backwards. Cannabis to deal with chronic conditions, especially when their onset is at an earlier age, is a godsend for many people. But understanding that it is a medicine plant and it's individualized medicine. We've touched on so many great topics today, Tim. Is there anything else though that you'd like to add that we didn't discuss? I'm sure this is just the beginning. We could easily do a whole series of interviews with you, and I know you'll be back.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot. And if anyone has any further questions, like I said, we have veterinary nurses on staff. So you can always email us, info@vetcbd.com. You can always call us, 562-754-3713. More than happy to talk to, pet owners. Sometimes we talk to their veterinarians because their veterinarians want a little bit more clarification on cannabis and CBD and hemp. The other thing that I also offer is I have a 1.5-hour continuing education webinar for veterinarians and registered veterinary technicians, so that way they can learn about cannabis, the clinical applications of cannabis, and they can actually get continuing education credit for it as well.
Are you finding veterinarians open to it, embracing it?
Yeah, because it's really interesting. They're seeing their clients come in and talk to them about how cannabis and about how CBD has been beneficial for their pets.
Seeing is believing.
Right. So when they see that for themselves, then they become really curious and they want to learn more about it.
That's exactly right. It's what happened for me. And I've not encountered as many medical doctors who are as open or willing to discuss cannabis as veterinarians are. It's interesting, especially considering that we're in a state where it began legally, medicinally, all the way back in 1996. But there's still a fear, a divide. It's still federally prohibited. But it's encouraging because pets can serve as a gateway for their owners, their veterinarians, to learn more about cannabis. For me, my journey with cannabis began with my dog. It changed my life. I started an entire platform, greenbeelife.com, to connect experts with listeners, with innovative brands.
Yeah, and we've seen that. We've seen pet owners initially utilize cannabis for their pets. And they said, you know what? I mean, I have some of these same symptoms too, or my family members have some of these same symptoms too. We see that cannabis can be very beneficial. And it's not, just, snake oil or, we're not just making this up. So they see the proof is in the pudding and they see how well it works for their pets. And then they start using it for themselves to improve their own lives.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Shu. We appreciate your sharing your insights and look forward to changing the way the world sees green, one conversation at a time. We're looking forward to having you back.
Thanks for having me, Maria. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Just Say No. That's No with a K, with me, your host, Maria Calabrese. I really hope you found my conversation with veterinarian Dr. Tim Shu about pets and cannabis enlightening and empowering. Remember, knowledge is key when it comes to the health and well-being of our furry friends. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, feel free to reach out to me personally. Until next time, take care and give your pets and yourselves some extra love. Just Say No is a Green Bee Life presentation airing live weekly on Friday afternoons from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific on KCA Radio and KCAA TV. Archived audio episodes are on Green Bee Life, greenbeelife.com, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and most third-party major platforms. For archived videos, check them out on GBL TV, on Green Bee Life, YouTube, and Rumble. To follow us, our Instagram and Facebook is at Just Say No Radio. To apply to be a guest on the show or for sponsorship and advertising opportunities, go to greenbeelife.com/Just Say No. And feel free to reach out to me, Maria, for any questions at maria@greenbeelife.com or call me at 818-758-6925.
Looking for some easy-to-access knowledge bombs about cannabis? Quick Hits offers bite-sized yet potent insights into how cannabis can improve our daily lives and explores different aspects of this multifaceted plant. Join us and our favorite thought leaders, activists, educators, lawyers, regulators, cultivators, entrepreneurs, and many more as we discover the benefits and crush the stigma of this miracle plant together.
Hey there, my fellow animal lovers and cannabis enthusiasts. Today I'm going to share some basic guidelines on how to determine the proper amount of CBD to add when making homemade dog treats for your fur baby. To get started, you want to make sure you have a good quality CBD tincture. For today's recipe, I chose to use VetCBD hemp tincture because it's ethically sourced from USA grown hemp. It's veterinarian formulated. It's earned an NASC quality seal, which means they're operating with some pretty high standards. It comes unflavored and it's available in 3 strengths. I've had great results giving it to my senior German Shepherd, Roxy, for terrible skin allergies, anxiety, and pain management. In general, I'd say I'm a savvy consumer, but I morph into a due diligence queen when it comes to sourcing products for my pets and our hive. All right, now that we have our hemp oil, we're gonna need a benchmark, a general guideline for a starting dose. I found conflicting information online and pretty much everywhere when it came to recommended amounts, as high as 1 milligram and even higher per pound of your pet's body weight. It was very confusing and concerning. So I was finally able to find a reasonable consensus and tapped into my veterinarian resources to verify the conservative 2 to 2.5 milligrams of CBD per 10 pounds of your pet's body weight, titrating up as needed and tolerated. Now, it's important to always consult with your veterinarian for personalized dosing or titrating up advice based on your pet's weight, size, breed, and individual health needs. One thing to keep in mind with store-bought cookies is most start at a 5 milligram per treat serving, which can be limiting if you have a smaller dog and all they get is a little nibble. Today's recipe's shape and size will yield about 50 servings. I'm going to use 125 milligrams in order to get a 2.5 milligram serving per treat. No, and go. Just Say No is a Green Bee Life presentation airing live weekly on Friday afternoons from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific on KCAA Radio and KCAA TV. Archived audio episodes are on Green Bee Life, greenbeelife.com, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and most third-party major platforms. For archived videos, check them out on GBL TV, on Green Bee Life, YouTube, and Rumble. To follow us, our Instagram and Facebook is at Just Say No Radio. To apply to be a guest on the show or for sponsorship and advertising opportunities, go to greenbeelife.com/Just Say No, and feel free to reach out to me, Maria, for any questions. I'm at maria@greenbeelife.com or call me at 818-758-6925.